Thanks for staying with News at Prime tonight. Business rescue practitioners at South African Airways are defending a decision to cut routes as part of a turnaround plan. This after objections from President Cyril Ramaphosa's government and labour unions. SAA will now halt services to 9 international cities, including Hong Kong and Sao Paulo, and also seize local services. Of course, that excludes Cape Town and Johannesburg. Well, to discuss some of the goings-on then at SAA and the process of the business rescue practitioners, with me in studio tonight is Thabang Motsohi. He's an organizational strategy consultant and author, and I might add he's also somebody who's consulted for SAA before. And before we get into this conversation, I want us to talk a little bit about the nature of the work that you did when you consulted for SAA under Vuyani Jagana and where the airline is today. Did you anticipate that the level of problems that you were dealing with then will de-escalate to the point of where it is today?
Well, thank you very much, and indeed it's a pleasure for me to be here with you, Kathy. Yes, I've done that consultation. I've been advisor to Jagana in 2018. Your question actually takes my mind back because that's not where the issues of SAA that I got involved in started. They started in 2017 and 2018, where, SCOA Parliamentary Committee invited me to come and make a presentation. At the time, they were considering a huge, capital injection into SAA, which was November, under the Minister of Finance then. And they wanted to understand exactly what is the context around which SAA works. So I did that, and that is available publicly. And then, April 2018, I was asked again by the same committee to now give a different consideration. And the question was simple. Can the SAA turnaround strategy be implemented successfully? What needs to be done? And in that presentation, I made it very, very clear. One, I have gone through the strategy, and it is well-founded. In fact, it's quite bankable. It can be done. But I need to take you back a little bit, when you talk about restructuring, because, this word restructuring is used too recklessly, at times, because it is business specific. For instance, you may have known about the cases of Lewis stores that had problems, etc., etc. Now, in the places like, for instance, Welkom, Odendaalsrus, and so on, Lewis used to do very well during the heydays of mining, when mining was really pumping. And what happened when mining really went down? Those are almost ghost towns. So for a business rescue application in that situation, it's easy, because then you're thinking about where do you relocate? Because the market doesn't support the business. How do you relocate and where? But for an airline, the difference is that you're not selling goods. You're selling confidence. You don't enjoy the fruits for which you pay now. You enjoy those fruits at a future date. People buy tickets 6 months, 10 months in advance. And why do they do that? They do that because they know that, this entity will deliver. So there's a trust element, there's a confidence element, which is very important. Now take it back to where we are now. I said at the time, in 2018, the shareholder must not get into activating the restructuring unless 4 or 5 things are met. Number one, there must be a budget to do the work. It was estimated then. And that budget must not be something that is approved. It must be in the bank. Second thing, SAA needed to be, or needs to be exempted from the PFMA. The third thing, whoever is given that responsibility, and by then they recruited what you call the Chief Restructuring Officer, which was Davis, and they just recruited Jagana to come in. They should have the absolute responsibility, undiluted executive powers to take decisions. All right? That's how it is done. And when you start it, you can't stop, because you're talking about confidence here. The market needs to experience the same product.
Sure.
Whether you are changing the back room, you're changing the operations, etc. But what I then said was that unless those 4 things are in place, don't do it. And those 4 preconditions are the responsibility of the shareholder. None of them have been met.
So ultimately, because government in this instance did not adhere to a plan that it had agreed to, effectively led to SAA being in the state where it was then vulnerable to even being put through a business rescue process.
You're actually summarizing it very well, because the question becomes, if government is the sole creditor, don't worry about the banks, because whatever loans they have advanced to SAA, they are guaranteed by the state. So the state is the sole creditor to SAA. Now, when you put it into business rescue, normally when you put a business into business rescue, it's because you want to balance the demands of different creditors. In this case, it's only the state. Now, the question really arises, why do you put it into a business rescue? You're the sole creditor. You know what you have to do. It has been cleared and stated, clearly stated. If you can't meet those 4 conditions, the next option is the only reasonable, which is liquidate.
I wonder then, if that is in fact the case, what are the interests at play that would have led to government choosing the business rescue process as an option, rather than fully implementing the turnaround strategy and perhaps not going the liquidation route?
I think this is where the conundrum is. I call it a conundrum, or contradiction in policy. I don't understand it too, because what are you doing about it? Basically, Jakhana, when he left in 2018, he left because none of those 4 things were done. So he was wasting his time. He couldn't do what he was supposed to do. And you can't really expose your reputation to such a situation, so he quit. Now, basically, then you bring in the business rescue team, subject them to exactly the same pressures, the same limitations as Jakhana did. But the difference this time is that the business rescue team is larger, it's got American experts, a huge component of it is dollar-based.
So do you think, and I'll ask you this question because, again, you had an opportunity to work somewhat with Jakhana, or even give feedback, and I know that the 2 of you didn't necessarily always see eye to eye, but do you think that he was given enough room and enough scope to be able to save SAA without interference from either whether it's public enterprises or any other interest in government?
He had no chance. Jakhana had no chance. And I told him and I told Parliament, unless you have those 4 conditions in place, forget it. Don't try to do it. You might as well just liquidate the thing, because you're going to move from one crisis to another. And all that I have said has actually occurred.
What do you think this business rescue process is going to lead to? Because last week, of course, we had the President and the Public Enterprises Department saying they don't approve necessarily of some of the decision to cut routes, and therefore they'll be making recommendations. They want the practitioners to review that process. But of course, under law, the practitioners have the right to do whatever it is that they see fit, that they want to do.
I think it goes to the fundamental question that I raised in an article that I wrote in 2018 and 2017. Shareholder, what do you want to do with SAA? What is the purpose that you want SAA to fulfill? That question has not been answered. It is 3 years outstanding. Because I said, unless you answer that question, you're going to founder and flounder all the way through. That is where we are. You cannot do anything like business rescue until you answer that question. Now, what the business rescue announced, for instance, last week, or past few days, about the severe reductions in domestic, international, etc., etc. He's doing it because he's under financial pressure. There are no funds. So he has to act immediately. But what if he had all the funds that he needed? He wouldn't have done that. What he has now done could perhaps be part of the strategy that he is yet to reveal by the end of February. We don't know what he wants to do by the end of February. If so much has already been announced and done, what is it that they're going to do? Because in the airline business, it is all about the route network.
So are you saying ultimately that even the staggering of the payments to SAA is jeopardizing the process? It jeopardized the turnaround plan and subsequently will jeopardize the business rescue process? Absolutely.
Look, I'll give you a very simple example. Australia, Qantas, went through exactly the same thing. New Zealand went through exactly the same thing. Let's take, Australia as a case in point. They had a budget. They chose a person to do the restructuring. The money was in the bank. They issued a resolution. No one will interfere with the decision making. And that man did it with his committee, and it was done in record time, stipulated, and it delivered on each and every outcome that was expected. Now, let me tell you, restructuring is a very messy, disruptive and destructive enterprise. When you do it, you must be clear what you want to obtain. You must be clear what you want to achieve. And you must make sure that those 4 ingredients for success are in place. And it doesn't matter who you ask. You can go to McKinsey, you can go to anyone else, and they've tested the position that I've made. It will not change. Unless you have it, you're wasting time.
I want us to talk lastly, because we're running out of time, on the issue of confidence. Confidence in SAA has been incredibly eroded, especially from a customer base perspective. How much of that has to do with how the business rescue practitioners are going about doing their business as far as the route cancellations are concerned?
It has everything to do with it. It has absolutely everything to do with it. That's why I give you a scenario. If they had all the budget, all the money they needed, they couldn't have gone through the process that they announced last week. They would have done something else. So confidence now is gone. Remember, SAA went through a jolting, a situation a month ago when the travel agencies, decided to abandon them. After that incident, now you have this situation. I can tell you, this is what you call a death blow.
Is it going to survive it?
I don't think so. I don't think it will survive it. You can't have 2 blows within 2 months that are so fundamental to the core business of the organization, and you think it will survive. You need a real look. You need something else. You need a different approach. Unfortunately, the way things are going according to the law, they just have to get a new business rescue practitioner or literally swallow a bitter pill. The government has to do that. This is a shareholder's problem. It is not a SAA problem. Shareholder cost all of this. Therefore, swallow the pill, restart, look afresh, and do something different.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there for tonight. Let me thank you so much for your insights, Thabang Motsohi there. So we'll certainly make sure that we invite him back here again to share some of the insights that he knows. Of course, he's got the background scoop. He knows exactly what's going on in those SAA papers and financials. We're going to take a short break. News at Prime continues after this. Do stay with us.